What's up, team? It's Joe Mill here with Killer Miller Q. I had to come slip you in something in the midweek. This is going to be something great for all you beginners out there or just people in general trying to level up your game overall. We're going to be going through fire maintenance and a way to run a nice clean fire on your offset or smoker, along with some fire management tips if you do got a Lone Star grill, some of the things I done kind of learned along the way. Hold tight, another good one coming your way. All right, so obviously we're gonna be working and looking at today's offset management with the Lone Star smoker here. But with that said, these instructions, these are gonna be things that you can take no matter what kind of smoker you got. I used to have another offset that was made by Brinkman. It was a Trailmaster. I want to say it was real similar to like a Oklahoma Joe type of an offset. Solid one, a couple $100 to get started with. Nothing nearly like this tank I got here, but with that said, a lot of the things I kind of learned along the way, and then it started making more sense as I heard more of the pros talking about it. But let's just talk about the general basic stuff. We talking about running this offset. The reason they call these offsets, if you don't know, is we're gonna be starting with the fire over on the right side. Basically, you got an opening that's going to allow the smoke and the heat to penetrate and go into the chamber. From there, it's going to be getting drawn and pulled through this smokestack in the air that's coming through here, and then right out the top. When we're looking at the top, we want to make sure that we get to this point where this smoke is coming out where it almost looks like there's nothing there, or it should be thin white or even bluish looking. If we're ever seeing white smoke, usually that's an instant alarm to tell you something's wrong. Usually that tells me that I'm either low on wood, my fire's not breathing enough, something to that nature. One way or another, I need to get up and go check. That's the smoke that I don't want on my meat. That's the smoke that gives your meat the harsh taste. So one of the first things is, I know for specifically with the Lone Star, they tell you that it's made to be operated when you want to leave this stack completely open. One reason I also like leaving that stack completely open is I want plenty of airflow as we're kind of pulling this heat from one side all the way to the other. I want this to be no impediment. I want nothing but air flowing through there so that air can just keep moving over my meat and right out the stack. From there, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be changing your temperatures and controlling your temp. You're going to be doing that from over here on this side damper. And this is where I'll be choking down the fire to be able to get the temperatures down or whatever have you. That's going to happen right here. Other than that, I'm going to leave that stack open the whole time. So one of the first things we do is, even if we just using salt and pepper, you probably heard me say this before on some of my videos, if we start with a good fire, you can literally come out with good product. So one of the main things we need to do is make sure that we running a clean fire like we were talking about with that smoke, and it starts right on in here. And I'm literally somebody that's cooking on my smoker weekly, if not a couple times a week, so it stays dirty. One of the first things I have to do when I get started is we want to get rid of all of this ash in here. Really, I don't even have that much comparatively to sometimes if I'd have did a brisket or something like that. But you don't want to start a cook with all this ash to start. One of the first things that your fire needs is oxygen. And if I got all of this ash in here, not only is it already blocking the oxygen to get my fire going, but along the way, and once I start creating more ash, it's just gonna make it to the point where my fire's getting suffocated. You'll start seeing a lot of these little embers of ash and everything starting to float around, and that stuff goes through the pit, that stuff goes onto your meat, and that takes away from you looking pretty, and it also gives it a bitter taste. So we want it to be nice and clean when we start off. That way we get a nice clean smoke, a nice clean burn, and we can get a nice hot fire. So first thing that I'm gonna do is I'm gonna clean this baby up. Just like that. Nothing too crazy. It don't got to be absolutely perfect. I'm not necessarily doing my deep clean, but I just use my one of another better good investments that I grabbed. Nothing but something simple off of Amazon. Just a handy dandy little dustpan. It's ergonomic, so it actually fits in there pretty well with the little broom. And then make sure you get you something to put your ashes in. You don't want to throw those directly in the garbage. Those ashes will have embers that will hold on a lot longer than you think. And sometimes that's how you end up with fires. You can throw those ashes away, and later on they'll get to wrestling up, getting moving around, get a little bit of air. Next thing you know, they'll ignite with something in your garbage, and you'll have your house fire. So get you a nice little tin pan. I pretty much put all my ashes in there, and if anything, I would dump this before I actually put the new ashes in, so that way each ash in there is at least over 2 weeks old. So, and that top puts on there pretty tight and cuts off all the air. But anyway, that's pretty much what I do with my ashes. what I use really quick to get a quick brush out and a wipe out of the basket. But here we go. Everything's nice and cleaned out. Now let's move on to getting the fire started. So that right there is what I like to get started with in my bed for coals. If I can, usually when Costco always got the great deals, they'll have this huge bags, 2 of these bags on sale for around 18 bucks or something like that. Can't beat that, so I usually grab a few and they help me through the summer. But overall, I'll use any basic charcoal from Kingsford. Do not use lighter fluid in your pits. I mean, obviously you can. I old school, I grew up on it, but definitely you can save some money and get to a whole lot more natural and easier and not have to worry about burning off that toxic stuff by getting yourself a charcoal chimney. It's an old one. They last forever, nothing too special. Basically, we're going to use good old-fashioned science to let this thing get lit up, and we won't need all of that lighter fluid and everything, and there's never a chance where you have to leave in the middle of your cook just to go get lighter fluid to keep everything going. Only thing you do, you fill this top part up with the charcoal, as you see. Pretty much I even just take off the bag and I'll tear a little bit of the paper off of here because it's thicker and it burns great, and we stuff that right in the bottom. From there, all I'm gonna do is light that paper on fire. A lot of times I'll kind of get 2 different spots that I'll kind of light just to make sure. One of the easy rules of thumb, as long as I can see a little bit of smoke to start to come out the top, just like that, set it and forget it. We're gonna come back in about 10 minutes. And I usually know when these are done, assuming if I'm trying to like do barbecue and I let these babies get all the way screaming, piping hot, white, red, and everything, and I'll see a flame coming right out the top. A lot of times for going in the smoker and starting off with that cold bed, I'll let them get good and going, but I won't let them completely die out because I want to be able to catch my wood. But one way or another, I'll see you back in about 10 minutes. All right, so it has been about 10 minutes, and I can already see from here, we're about where I wanted to be. If you look real close, see if I can get in there without burning my camera up. There is a flame coming right out of there. Let me see if I can get it against my tree. There you go. You can catch it a little bit that way. Nice thin little flame you can kind of check out. That's usually what I'm looking for. Let me know these coals is ready. 10 minutes, I haven't touched nothing. As simple as me putting some paper in the bottom, putting the coals on the top, lighting those, and moving around. So normally, what I would have did was, I would have came right over here, I would have lit these up first, I would have went over there to my grill and started the clean out process. By the time I had that clean and wiped down my whole grill, I come back, these coals is pretty much ready. Make sure that you get you a glove of some sort, because even though those handles are supposed to be guarded, it's still gonna be pretty hot. All we're gonna be doing now is taking this over to the fire bed. All right, I went and grabbed my welder's glove. I tell you what, this right here is my baby. Look at them. I can tell you right now, them coals are ready. You see those piping red down there? If I was barbecuing or something like that, from here I would go ahead and just pour these directly into the Weber, and I'd be legit. Whew, baby's hot. All right, we're gonna toss them in. Alright, I got a couple that fell on the ground. These welder's gloves, you can pick them right up. Alright, so I like starting with charcoal because it gives me a nice even base of where I'm gonna start with my cold bed. The cold bed is like one of the #1 things to help out with your fire. A lot of times what I found was a lot of that white smoke comes when your fire's halfway going out and the wood's starting to stay or trying to keep lit. If you keep a good cold bed, your wood will constantly stay more or less in flame and burning, and then it gives off the kind of smoke that you want. It's when it's getting half and half, that's when you have your issues. So starting with that, next we're gonna grab us a couple logs to kind of throw on here. Now I know this gets super intricate, but you know what? It all makes sense later on. So I'm looking at this wood. I'm about to be getting this base going. Now you say it really don't matter, but at the end of the day, the quicker I can kind of get more of these coals, bigger coals, some lumps all broke down, the better. So I'm looking at these, and literally you can feel this stuff when you pick it up. The difference in the weight in the wood, along with the thickness and everything. Obviously, some of these lighter ones are gonna catch up a lot quicker than, say, this thick one right here. So this might be a good one when I'm actually looking to go ahead and get started cooking and let it roll for a little bit. These will be great to kind of get it going with right now. So I'm gonna start with a few logs. Cross those up. That way that they can get a little bit of air under there and they can breathe. And I picked this third one. Now this one actually's got a good little weight to it. It should be perfect for the third. All right. So, when it comes down to it, let's talk about a couple quick things while this thing is igniting. One, you see my door is wide open. What that's doing is giving us a ton of oxygen, which is partially the reason, on top of the fact I'm in Arizona and this wood is so dry, that's part of the reason this thing's already or kicked into a full-on blaze that quick. And obviously we had those nice coals to start with. Remember, got to start with a good coal bed. That's one of the best secrets I can give you today. Good coal bed. Now, as we looking at this wood and it's kind of burning and everything, if you can even look close enough, if you can see it, I'm not sure, you can see the darker whiter smoke that comes off. And a lot of times when you really get going and there's not a whole lot of flame, you'll see tons of smoke billowing out of here. That lets you know that this fire isn't that hot, your coals aren't that hot, and that's part of a lot of that dirty smoke that's coming off. Right now, because that flame is already rocking so much and it's getting so much air coming through on this side, it's already flowing like a normal good running fire. And if I come over here and look at this stack, notice we don't really see that much coming from it. You might, let me get it at the angle of the tree, so maybe you might even be able to see the smoke itself a little bit, but it's pretty thin. I can see it on my end, but again, it's pretty thin, which is how it should be when we're actually cooking on it. So you'll see some people, like I know I watched The Mad Scientist, a lot of times with those old school smokers, they'll leave this door pretty much open or cracked the whole time, and they'll run their fire just like this. Now, obviously, if I got this door open, I'm losing tons of heat. But with all of this metal and everything, you still got the flow going that way. I'm still going to be able to get my chamber up. I just might burn a whole lot more wood. I wouldn't recommend that, especially with a Lone Star. One of the beautiful things is this baby is super thick, well insulated. So once you get everything kind of flowing in one direction, you won't have to worry too much. But I think back to when I had my other offset, one of the things I didn't take into account is the amount of, it's made cheaper. There's more air that's flowing through it. It's losing a lot of oxygen in a lot of spaces, and my firebox was nowhere near this size. So when you're thinking about making it on your smoker, if you don't got a Lone Star, you don't got a box that's this big, which is absolutely huge, keep in mind that all your dimensions are going to be smaller. One of the main things that I didn't know then was I was using way too much wood back in the day. Part of the reason I always had a bad fire was because I was putting in these giant pieces of wood in this small box. It was overcrowded, couldn't breathe that well, and then half of the time I was just choking down my fire so hard to get to the temperature I wanted to cook at because I had so much wood in there, it was kicking off so much heat. And then later on, I kind of trial and error, I start figuring that stuff out. It don't take that much fire and wood to get to 225, 250. Especially I'm in Arizona in the summertime, it's 100 and something to start. So it really don't take that much. I just got to be able to keep it going. But anyway, so if I got my old smoker, or if you got a different smoker with a smaller box, more standard type of a smoker, Oklahoma Joe, something like that, keep in mind that you might want to look at having these splits as halves, right? You might even be able to get away with just going to a place like a fire store and then getting the bag where they got the thicker wood chunks, kind of like the ones I got down here as my little stop blocks. It's a cherry block right here. And another smoker, it's my smaller one, I could have did this after my coal beds and pretty much smoked with the wood using this and been fine. Instead, I was using full-on splits and didn't know why I was having so many issues with my fire. All right, so at initial, we're gonna let this thing burn up. My only goal in the beginning is that coal bed we were talking about. These first pieces of wood are like sacrificial lamb. I'm gonna leave this door open only to speed this process up and allow this thing to really get caught. And from there, we're gonna let those burn up and become more of the ashes or more of the coals at the bottom. From there, I'll throw on one of these big logs, we'll close this door, and then we'll let this thing stabilize. Before I get too far, I wanted to make sure I told you if you're new here, thanks for coming and checking me out. Hopefully you're getting some good tips on getting your fire together on your offset or your smoker. Make sure that you take a second to hit that bottom right corner and like and subscribe so you can follow along with the weekly cooks. And for all of my vets that's been here with me from the very beginning, I appreciate y'all. I hear your comments and I love y'all. We're going to keep doing this thing. Make sure you pass it on to somebody else so we can grow our barbecue community. Let's get back to the work. All right, team, to my point, this door has been open for about the last 10 minutes or so. and I'm pushing right along a little inside of 225, and I mean this door is wide open. So like I said, it can keep temperature like this, and there's like no smoke coming out of here. So when I got a lot of skunky wood, or if I was using like a lot of mesquite or something like that, where I was worried about it coming off too harsh, you can get away with this. But I do got a little daughter, so I would say, man, make sure you're careful with your dogs, your kids, and stuff. If you're gonna be leaving this fire door open, you don't want no issues. But with that said, we got this baby well going. You can tell we're still burning strong in here. Pretty much all my wood is burnt up. You know, for the longest when I was, little, you watch movies and stuff, you see all people with fireplaces and they got pokers, and it's kind of like something to do. But why do you do it? It's kind of one of those questions. Also, you see those little ambers and stuff kicking around? That's some of that stuff I was talking about. You got to be careful, because when you're in here messing around, this stuff can easily be going on your food. If you're not running a clean fire, if the door is not open, and if you're not a little bit careful about making too much of a ruckus, we don't want a lot of that kind of bleeding through. But basically, when I'm moving this around is, I want to kind of reposition and get me basically a new coal bed, right? Now I'm kind of move those around. You can see instantly by moving it around, flipping it around, stuff like that, you get new oxygen, or oxygen gets to new areas of it, and instantly my fire kicks up, and I can now feel that heat coming up on me. You can see a little bit of that smoke kicking back, but this baby is ready to roll now. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna throw me a nice log in, right over that fire, kind of crossways, so that way it's off the ground, it can still breathe. Now, if it was a situation where I was worried about waiting for this to catch, I would pretty much leave this door open until we got this fire. But at this point, I got my coal bed. You see those flames burning. We're gonna go ahead and close this door right up. Now, one of those things about kind of knowing your smoker. Now we're basically getting to the point where I'd be getting ready to throw some meat on. I know for me, when I got my door about that far open, so about a quarter of the way, compared to half, that's going to roughly give me around 225-ish to 250-ish. Obviously, we can kind of tweak it from there, but that's going to be good for where I'm about to be getting to for the most part. So now, all we're going to be doing is kind of sitting back and waiting. We're going to let everything stabilize. Instantly, you can see my temps starting to kick up now that we didn't close that door. And the other thing is now you can start getting a little more smoke out the top. But I mean, if you look, we already burning clean. Team, I'm going to take care of you. If we can just do some of the basics, we get us a good coal bed. We start with that. When we add that wood in, give that wood time to catch on fire. Then close the door. From there, the mess of it to take care of itself. We're already burning clean. Usually I would say I'm kind of measuring about 45 minutes to an hour of how long it'll take me being able to put my meat on, as far as getting my pit ready to go. I could probably make it a little bit shorter if I needed to, because basically I understand what I need to do. But I'd say that's an easy rule of thumb. 30 minutes to an hour for most smokers is what it's going to take you to really kind of get the fire going, get the pit established, and get everything stabilized and really get it burning. So now we can see that we got some smoke coming out of there. You can start to see my thin blue. That is what I'm looking for all the time when I'm cooking, for the most part. But with that said, it's a little darker than I usually like it. I can still see some of them darker embers and things like that in there. Some of that wood is really just getting going. So this will be when I will go back now and I will go season up my meat, give it a little bit of time to sit out. And then after maybe 20 minutes or so, it'll be probably time for me to throw a little log in there. And then I can throw my meat directly on. We're going to let this thing hang out. We already kind of smoking pretty clean. I'm up to a little over 225, so just like I told you, that's about where my smoker dials into. And it's probably gonna kick up a little bit more, so I think we'll probably get pretty close to 250. I'm gonna bring you back in a few more minutes. We're gonna check out this stack. All right, so we back. I done let this thing hang out for a good 10-15 minutes doing some work, let everything kind of stabilize. Went over a little bit over 250. Which is cool, because keep in mind, if I'm about to put some meat on right now, I'm going to open up this door, which is going to let out a ton of heat. That meat is going to be a little bit colder, and it usually drops down that chamber a little bit. So for me, usually, if I'm trying to shoot at about 250, don't get so caught up on everything has to be absolutely perfect. It's more about making things more smooth, making it roll, and obviously you don't want any huge degree changes. But that's probably going to stabilize out to it being about what I want once I put that cold meat in the chamber. But more than anything, what I wanted to bring you in here was to see, look at our smoke. This is what we're supposed to be cooking on, group. Can we even see? I'm gonna stay in the lane of this tree, so maybe we can get some of the vapors that you can kind of see. I can see it from my side, but looking through on my phone, I mean, y'all barely see anything. But you see, we up to 275-ish, and I'll show you that we got plenty of wood going and smoking while we on the inside. The thing is, though, we got that good coal bed, and we smoking right along, so we not getting all that bad smoke, which is what you want to be happening in there. So now let's talk about moving forward. We got this good coal bed going, and now let's think that we're into our cook. One thing that I'm gonna instantly do is I can kind of see is, probably won't make a difference, but I'd probably move that log around, flip that other side down, just so it can start to get burnt up too. The other thing is, once I got a log in there, we want to start presetting your next one. I always tell you I'm in Arizona, so conditions matter. I get my wood a lot drier, and it's so dry out here, our wood dries out a lot easier. But with that said, in most other places, you're going to want this wood to be a little more drying out, so it doesn't necessarily ignite or smolder as soon as you put it in there, and it'll actually ignite a little bit faster like we saw on those other logs. So one of these tricks that I learned with this Lone Star, being that you got such a big overall bed, and I would say that fire management basket is a must. Keeps everything together and makes it all flow a lot easier. You're gonna put that log off to the side of the basket. Yeah, it might catch a little bit, but most of the time it doesn't. Usually what I would do is I would put the bark side up, but that one's pretty clean on both sides. And that bark side is usually a little less it takes a little bit more for it to actually usually catch on fire. But one way or another, all you're doing while you're sitting over there on the side is this wood is drying out and getting almost ready. So when we get done, and I'm usually changing my wood here in the Lone Star roughly about every 45 minutes to an hour. And that's where I'm keeping my temperatures pretty easy. I would say if I'm only looking at keeping it between 225, 250, I add about a log every 45 minutes to an hour. If I'm trying to get somewhere in that 275, 300 range, not only am I going to open up my damper a little bit more, then I'm probably looking at more of a 2 log at a time. Depending on the size of those splits. You know, once you start seeing your coal bed full and everything, maybe you won't need to go so fast, and obviously you can judge off of your temps. But usually you're gonna need a little bit more coals in there. You're gonna need a little bit more wood to get more heat, along with more oxygen. So combination of those. But anyway, we're pretty much letting this wall preheat. Everything's burning in here good. I'm gonna go ahead and close this back up. When I come back in about 45 minutes, we'll grab that other log right off the top. We'll throw it directly on in the fire. And then from there, I won't need to keep that door open or anything because that log is already pre-lit and we already got our coal bed kind of not laid out. So we don't got anything to worry about now. We smoking right along. We got good smoke coming out the top. From there, we're just about dialing in your temperatures to where you want it to be. Like we talked about, we're always going to leave this smokestack completely open, so we got lots of air in the chamber for it to breathe and get it off of our meat. And then we're going to control the temperatures right over here on the side. Easy money. One thing that I did want to address really quick is I came back over, closed up my door, and I see I'm still kicking up a little bit on temperature. So usually, you know, whatever you do takes a little bit of time to really see what happened. If I've already closed the door and I still see my temperatures are kicking up little by little, and seeing the way that flame was roaring on the inside, it's probably going to overshoot 300, or at least get there, which is way far from where I want to be at 250. So I'm going to go ahead and make me a quick little adjustment now. I'm going to bring down me some of this air. When I bring down some of this air, one of the things that I'll probably see is you'll probably get more smoke that's coming out of the stack as the fire is adjusting to the lack of oxygen that it's getting now. I can start to see it's coming through a little more white. Nothing I got to worry about because we were so clear I could barely even see it, but I can see that it's gotten a little bit thicker. And then from there, the only other thing that I wanted to bring up real quick is some of the other things that I've seen when it comes to drying that wood out. A lot of times, especially if you don't got a a firebox that's this big and you don't put that wood off to the side, a lot of times, and like I think about my old offset, my Brinkman, it had the hot plate on top where you could pretty much cook on top, and a lot of people will sit it on top. And if I had that Brinkman, I probably wouldn't have cared so much, to be honest with you. I'll tell you what, on this Lone Star, and I've seen people do that too, I don't want to put any wood on top of here to preheat it, especially if you got enough space on the box. Even though I know I'm at the, what, 24 by 40, I think 24 by 42, one or two. And I know some of the smaller ones, firebox isn't quite as big, so maybe you don't got as much space as me, but even still, you pay so much for this. The last thing I want to do is for any of my aesthetic stuff to be not pretty, and it's on purpose. I know if you start sitting wood up here, obviously this is a place where you could dry it as well, but this stuff thins out once it actually is hot. And I've seen that it actually will put gashes and scratches up here that later on will be some of the first areas that you're gonna have to work on with having rust issues and things like that. So I would stick to keep my wood on the inside if I'm gonna be drying it out. Obviously, if you in different conditions or something like that where they really got to be dried out, you might have to look at something different. But I would stay away from putting anything directly onto my grill so I wouldn't have any issues. If you did have to and you had a Lone Star, I would even venture to open this up and put it onto my actual griddle plate, which is easy to burn off and everything clean, versus putting it on the top on my outside finish. One of the nice things is once you open up this top and you cook on here, you still really don't lose any heat in your chamber, so you'll be fine. Okay, you see our smoke. It's been this way the whole time. We've been rolling on the temp. It's been easy. Before we burn out all of this daylight, I just want to kind of take you a peek in here and then show you how we're going to more or less add the next log in. So if I came in here right now, again, I got a welder's glove, so you wouldn't want to do this with anything else. I can actually grab this, and as you see, you just kind of moving it around. I got great coals on the bed, and now you see, I still got good temperature, but if I didn't know to actually come and check this out at about every 45 minutes, I would have messed around and let my coal bed dwindle down to a little bit of nothing, and then all of that work, we got to build it back up. Also keep in mind, as soon as I turned that over and moved it around, it's super light, it broke all apart. Look how quick it caught on fire. Get a new part, some air, bam, instantly it's burning. You can see this piece of wood that we threw over to the side and kind of why we actually do it. You see it's already lightweight ignited. It's definitely dried out. When I throw this on there, we'll see how long it takes. Boom. We already ignited. If you look, there's hardly any smoke coming out of here right now. You can see just a tad in this area. But overall, hardly any smoke coming out. And that goes back to the basics that we started off with. Great coal bed, dry wood. Instantly, that caught a fire. It's not giving off all of that bad smoke. I'm done. Now, if I was gonna keep on smoking, because I'm all done now, we're pretty much wrapping this video up. Right now, all I'd be doing is replacing this log right here on the side with a new one. I'd close this baby right up and let it go ahead and stabilize and get to the business. But from there, that's all you gotta do. You can see in the beginning, you get a little more smoke out of there. But I mean, looking at it on camera, it's almost hard to see. But this is what I done got used to. All right, team, that's a wrap. Pretty easy, pretty straightforward. Clean out your smoker, get you lots of airflow going through, get you a good cold bed that you can actually cook on. Take the time to let that wood catch on fire so it ignites before you actually close the door and get back to cooking. And then make sure that you don't tinker too much. Give yourself a little bit of time so you can actually see what's happening with the changes that you've actually made. And then know your smoker. Make sure that you're using the right wood and your splits aren't too big, and that might be throwing you off before you even get started. Other than that, you know I got a whole lot more tips for you. We got a whole lot more good cooks. I'll see you here in a couple days. Killer Miller Q. Peace.